Hi, welcome to Dog Safe Animal Handling. My name is Amanda Bullis and I work here in the behavior department at the Dumb Friends League. So before we get started talking about safe animal handling that's specific to dogs, I did want to go over some basic practices in case you've come from a different shelter. We just want to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page when they work at the Dumb Friends League specifically. So these are just the 9 best practices that we want you to keep in mind when working with animals here at the Dumb Friends League. So just remember to talk softly to the animals. You know, some dogs may respond to that high-pitched voice, but we always want to start with those soft tones. Move at the animal's pace. We know you guys have a lot to do, but if you can slow down with some animals, the ones that are showing you some more concerning behaviors, you're going to be able to make up that time with the other animals that aren't as nervous. Always use a carrier to transport a cat. Always use a slip leash and proper leash techniques to transport a dog, moving them from one room to another. Only carry dogs that weigh less than 30 pounds, and we'll talk about why a little bit later. When dealing with small mammals, make sure that if you have to pick them up, that you are holding them close to the body, kind of cupping them together. Always keep the animals away from your face. We know it's easy to want to hold that puppy or kitten right up to your face, but that definitely puts your face in a bad, compromised position if that animal were to get stressed out. So definitely hold them away from your face. Keep your hands away from the bellies of cats and dogs, and we'll talk about why we recommend that. And then the last thing, just remember behavior is fluid. And what that means is that behavior is always changing. So what you see when you first come up to an animal isn't necessarily the same thing you're going to see a few minutes into it, 10 minutes into it, depending on how long you have to spend. If you have to do something that's going to take up to 30 minutes, that's a lot of time that behavior potentially is going to change. So really the main thing for that is just always keep an eye on your animal. So the other thing we want to talk about real quick is the different stressors that some of these animals in a shelter are going to be going through. So you may have dogs at home and you may see different behaviors in shelter dogs that are similar to your dogs at home, but keep in mind that the dogs here at the shelter are going through a lot of different things, a lot of different stressors that are going to alter their behavior, especially in the moment. They may start off again really good and a couple minutes in change really, really quick simply because of the stressors from the shelter. So some of the things they're going to be going through, a number of animals. So some of these dogs have had either zero experience or they've had bad experience with other dogs. So hearing them, seeing them, smelling them could cause a lot of stress, which could alter their behavior. Number of people. So some of these animals haven't had a lot of experience with people, or maybe they've only had one person in their lives and they're 10 years old, and all of a sudden there's 20 people in their lives. And so keeping that in mind when you're going and dealing with these animals, some of them maybe just nervous of people in general, but also how many people have dealt with that animal on that specific day. You may not be the only person who comes along. You know, animal care cleans, somebody medicates, and then you come along to show that animal to a patron. That's a lot of different people in one day, which may be very stressful. Noises. So classic noises are the building noises. So the intercom, if you wear a walkie when you walk around for your department and that goes off, that could cause some stress. We also have some different building noises like pipes churning over, things like that. And then people noises. So for instance, if you are talking next to a kennel, you might find that that dog is getting stressed out just from you talking with someone else, or playing your music. If you're playing your music pretty loud next to a kennel, that dog inside that kennel may get stressed just from that noise. Smells. So the thing to keep in mind in smells, we try to stay, really clean and keep our contagion level down by cleaning regularly. But those cleaning smells are pretty strong, especially for a dog who can smell really well. Even the hand sanitizer, you get it, you rub your hands together, you kind of dissipate it. But if you were to offer your hand to your dog fairly quickly after that, they might be pulling back because it's kind of repulsive to them. So keep in mind those smells, but also even the smells that you potentially do in the morning. So do you put perfume on, cologne, your favorite lotion? By the time you get to work, it may have dissipated a little, but that dog is going to be able to still smell that, and that may be a little repulsive to them as well. Building, other things beyond smells and noises. Just keep in mind that it's a building. It is not home. That dog may have been laying on the bed at home, and now it's in a kennel, a little square thing with a blanket. So it is not home, or they were running the streets, and now they're confined again in a building. So this place, we try our best to make it comfortable, but it still isn't home, or it still isn't freedom of running the streets. Recent events, so that kind of speaks to two things. So recent events, what happened before they came here? Were they laying on that couch? Were they roaming those streets? That stress of coming into the shelter, depending on what was happening before, may cause a difference in behavior. but also recent events kind of speak to what happened before you came along. So again, did somebody medicate that dog and now you're trying to take it out for a walk or something like that. That dog may be really stressed from the event that just occurred, and you may be the one that's experiencing the changes in behavior. And then lastly, individual stress thresholds. So just like people, dogs have different levels of stress that they can handle. A lot of it depends on socialization. A dog that's well socialized may actually do fairly well in this environment, but a dog that's not well socialized, again, that 10-year-old dog that's been in one home its whole life and only been around one person may really struggle in this kind of environment with all the different stressors. So just keeping these things in mind as you are dealing with the animals in general, but specifically dogs, will kind of help you navigate through those behavior changes. Okay, so let's jump into specifically dog safe animal handling. So this is kind of what we're going to go over today. We're going to talk about body language, both their language and our language. We're going to talk about leash handling, proper techniques, getting a dog out of its kennel, how to navigate stairs, loose dogs, dog fights and dog bites, and then we're going to go over the different equipment that is approved to kind of help with prevention of some of those bites. Okay, so let's first get started with body language and their body language. So the first one we're going to talk about is the comfortable dog. So this is the dog that we hope to see. This is a dog that makes our job a little bit easier. So when you look at a dog, the best way to tell what kind of behavior you are seeing is to really look at the whole dog, from the head all the way to the tail. Everything about that dog is going to tell you something. So for a comfortable dog, the first thing that you're going to notice is their position. So essentially the weight is going to be on all four of the feet, evenly distributed. The tail is going to be loose. Wherever it kind of naturally lays, it will lay. And it may also be wagging, but it's a nice loose wag. Eyes are going to avoid eye contact. So they're not going to just stare at you. They're going to look at you, look away, look at you, look away. Ears are going to be held back softly, kind of, again, that neutral component. Movement, so they are more likely to engage with you, but as they approach you, you may find they kind of arch around as they come up. They may also be a little bit lower to the ground. And then they may bark at you, but it's going to be this nice, exciting, friendly, attention-seeking bark. Okay, the next dog, which we see a lot of in this environment, is going to be that fearful dog. So when we talk about positions, there's a couple different ones. So the dog, if they are standing, may have the weight on the back, and that's basically so they can start to kind of back up. Or they may be curled up, that little black and white picture, curled up really tight to protect its abdomen. Tail, if you can see it, it's either going to be held kind of low or it might be tucked underneath between their legs. Eyes, they may be staring at you, so every movement you make, they're kind of following you around. Or they may invert their gaze altogether, maybe stare at the floor or stare at the wall. Ears are going to be held back more tightly. You're going to start to see some tension here in the forehead as they pull those ears back. Movement, they may not move at all. They may just, again, remain frozen in that curled up position. Some other things you might see, though, they may be quick to roll onto their back. So this is the main reason we don't want you to pet dogs' bellies, is most dogs, when they roll onto their back, they are doing it because of fear. What happens is people come along and we start to pet those bellies and we make a different association with them. But since we don't know these dogs, we don't know if rubbing their belly is actually a positive thing, we do want you just to avoid petting any bellies, even if it looks like the dog is wanting that. Just stay away from it, wait for the dog to kind of sit back up, and then you can start to pet the head, the body, stuff like that. Another movement you may see is trembling. So it could be the full body, it could be just like the back legs if they're standing up, so looking for some of that trembling. Back, they may arch their back. So if you see the picture on the bottom with that little yellow guy, he's kind of got his back arched. And then vocalizations, they may do no vocalizations, be completely quiet. However, they may start to growl. Okay, so fearful can actually be broken down a little bit more. So we have fearful but appeasing and fearful but defensive. So the first one we're going to start with is fearful but appeasing. So appeasing is basically they are perceiving you as a threat and they're trying to show that they are not threatening so that you will kind of alter some of that behavior. So a lot of these things, trying to make themselves look small, for instance, they may be sitting or go to lay down. Their tail is going to be held low and close to the body. It may wag, but it's usually going to be just this little tip of the tail wagging, and it may even wag when the tail is tucked. They're definitely going to avert their gaze. They're going to look at anything but you. Rolling onto their back, so again, that appeasing posture of showing you that they are not threatening by showing you a very vulnerable spot. They may fearfully pee, so if you were to reach out, they may kind of squat down and pee a little, or if you were trying to get them to leave the kennel, may squat down and pee a little. Quick to lift their paw, so a very classic dog that does this is little Chihuahuas. Usually they'll hold their paw up while they're also trembling. Lip licking, so they may be lip licking themselves, but there's also a tongue flicking, so kind of flicking it towards the thing they see is threatening. You can see this when two dogs are interacting. And then the classic submissive grin. So even though it's called a grin, this is usually just the incisors are showing. And when we say more a submissive grin, more appeasing, look at the rest of the body as well. There are dogs that do kind of a smile, but with a submissive grin, it is usually going to be those incisors. And a lot of the rest of the body is showing you that the dog is very uncomfortable. They are low to the ground. They may be trembling a little. They may pee a little while they're doing that grin. So really don't just say they're grinning and they're happy, or don't just assume that they're baring their teeth at you. Look at the whole body to see if this dog is just fearful and maybe doing more of that submissive grin. Okay, the other one, fearful but defensive. So these guys are going to be in a little bit different of a posture. They're not going to make themselves necessarily small. They're going to stand up. And these are the guys that, they're defensive, but they're not going to necessarily escalate to aggression unless you put them in that position. So when you start to see some of these postures, this is really where you're going to want to change your postures. So these guys usually have, fully dilated eyes. Sometimes you will start to see the whites in their eyes, and that often has to do with the position that they're laying. They're just kind of shifting their eyes, so you may see the white showing. Ears are going to be held back really tight against the head. Their hackles may be raised. Hackles, if you never heard that term, is basically the fur along the back of their neck and down to their tail, so it may be kind of puffed up. Tail is going to be held low, tight against the body. It may even be tucked. Baring of the teeth. So again, this is going to be different. It could just be a section of the teeth. It could even be the incisors. So this is where you really have to make sure that you're not seeing a submissive grin, that you actually are seeing them bare their teeth. And then a classic thing for these guys is what we call the sideways stares. So you can see like this little min pin. He is not facing you, but he's keeping an eye on you. So he's going to be the one that if you were to move around, he's going to stare the whole time. So here's just a little drawing of the fearful but defensive. So looks a little different than that min pin, but kind of the same postures. The ears held back, the hackles raised, body low, tail tucked, starting to pull back their teeth, potentially even showing their teeth, wrinkling the nose. So again, you're going to see just more defensive postures, but they're still got the weight on the back. So they would rather move away from you than come forward. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our last main one, and that is the assertive, offensive dog. So when we talk about dogs that are a little bit more pushy, we try to avoid words like aggressive, because aggressive is kind of just in a situation, they may escalate to aggression. When dogs are a little bit more on the pushy side or they're offensively aggressive, it is again, a situational thing, but it has an explanation. So aggression is something, it can be across the board. What does aggression really mean? So we just try to avoid saying that word and focus more on either being assertive, which would be kind of opposite of appeasing, or offensive, which again is that dog that's not going to wait to see what you're going to do. Like a defensive dog, they're going to act right away. So with these guys, often what you're going to see is they're going to be standing up for sure, and their weight's usually on the front, and that just allows them to advance a little bit quicker. They're also often full frontal facing versus that sideways aspect. Tail is going to be pretty stiff. Often it's held high, and it may start to wag. But with this kind of wag, you're going to get this nice stiff wag. It's not going to be this loose, happy dog, or just the little tip of it. It's going to be a nice stiff wag. So a wag by itself is not a good indicator of what a dog is feeling. What type of wag is really what you're looking at. Eyes, these guys are usually going to be staring at you and tracking you as you move. Ears are going to be perked forward, but they also may be held back tightly to their head. So again, don't just look at the ears because each dog is going to be different. Look at the whole dog. Some other things you're going to see, as they move around, they're going to be a lot stiffer about their movements. And then vocalizations, these guys are definitely quick to growl, and they are going to bark at you, but it's going to be not that happy attention-seeking bark. It's going to be more of that alert, deep bark. Hackles may also be raised, and then sometimes with these guys, when they're interacting with other dogs, they may be quick to do that T-stance approach. So you can kind of see in that bottom picture, the one dog kind of just approaches quickly, and then the way they stand, it creates a T from their body and the other dog's body. It's a very pushy, assertive posture. And then here's kind of just a drawing of that. So you just see a lot more tension in this dog, stiff legs, leaning forward a little. They still have their corner of their mouth pulled back, showing a lot more teeth, wrinkled nose. So you're definitely going to be able to tell this dog from the get-go because you just see a lot more tension and they're facing you versus, again, that fearful dog that's more likely facing away but still maybe watching you. Okay, one dog we did want to talk to you about is nursing mothers. So nursing mothers do often fall in that offensive category, and it is because they are protecting their babies. So the main thing to keep in mind is if you do have to interact with these dogs, you really want to go slow. You don't want to just walk right in and start picking up those puppies because mom may escalate pretty quickly. If you do have to interact with mom and puppies and you are seeing some concerning behaviors, the best thing to do is to get help to try to maybe shift mom to the other side so you can freely go and mess with those puppies. The other dog we want to talk about that sometimes people are confused on where to categorize this dog is that aroused dog. So arousal is not aggression, it's not assertive or offensive. It's just a heightened state of arousal. But what happens with these dogs is it does kind of lower their threshold for aggression and they're quicker to escalate in situations. So some of the common behaviors you see with these guys, they are quick to bounce off of everything. So they jump on you, they jump on the kennel door, they jump in general, and they're just all over the place. When you're walking these guys, they're usually the ones that are darting every which direction. Increased heart rate, lower impulse control, so again, quick to jump on you, escalate to becoming mouthy, maybe light pressure, but the more aroused they get, may start to feel harder pressure. This is often where a lot of our bites do occur from that dog that just got escalated and started using her mouth, but too much pressure. That hackles raised, another term for that, piloerection. Teeth chattering, so you may actually be able to see or hear their teeth chattering. Dilated eyes, and then their vocalizations are going to be a lot of whining and just relentless barking. So it's not alert barking, it's not attention seeking, it's just this bark, 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 bark. It just continues and continues, and again, they just can't focus. Unfortunately, accidents can happen pretty easily with an aroused dog just because they can't focus, so they aren't really paying attention to you, and they don't really care if they jump on you and bonk you in the nose, especially if you're bending over. So you really have to be careful when you're around an aroused dog. Okay, so that is our body language for dogs. We do have these little sheets out that kind of break everything down, because again, remember when it comes to dog behavior, you really want to look at the whole dog. There will be times when things are kind of contradictory, so it's really looking at most of what the dog's body postures are showing you. So we do have these readily available in different areas. If you ever have an interaction with a dog and you're just not quite sure what that dog is showing you, you can always go take a look at this little sheet and kind of compare it to what you see. And you can also always talk to behavior staff and just kind of talk through what you saw. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our body language and how we should behave around dogs. So the first thing is just some general tips. The main thing is slow down. So again, we know you guys have a lot to do, but if you can slow down with some of those dogs that are showing you fear or showing you a little bit more offensive behaviors, you are going to be able to get through that dog a little easier and then make up that time somewhere else where you have a comfortable dog that isn't showing you those kind of things. Avoid direct eye contact. So the main thing is to keep your eyes soft, heavy eyelids, look at them, look away, look at them, look away, just like they would do with each other. Remember to talk softly. Allow the dog a chance to initiate engagement. So anytime that you can allow them to close the distance. Obviously, if they're showing good postures, allow them to close the distance. If they're showing concerning postures, I would alter what you do. But anytime you can get them to initiate, it just gives them that choice factor. And then observe their postures and act accordingly. So again, what are they showing you? Are they showing you what we consider distance decreasing behaviors, so those comfortable behaviors, showing you they do want that engagement? Or are they showing you more distance increasing behaviors, so those fearful, assertive, offensive postures? If they're showing you more of those, then I wouldn't necessarily want to walk right up to a dog and try to leash it. I would want to alter what I do. Okay, so interacting with a dog in a kennel specifically. So keeping in mind when you're in a kennel, you are in a smaller space. If you come in and you shut the door, and if you fully latch that door, you are now closed in with that dog. And so if their behavior changes, you want to be prepared to do something different yourself to protect yourself. So the first thing that we recommend when you first approach a kennel is something we like to call whoa. So basically it just means, approach, observe the dog, and see what you're seeing before you automatically go in. And we'll practice that in just a second. Again, allow the dog to initiate engagement, allow them to approach you. If they won't approach and they aren't showing too concerning of postures, then you can definitely approach them, but make sure you're approaching them appropriately. You wouldn't want to go straight on. You would also want to arch around as you approach them. Crouch down, bending at the knees rather than the waist. If you bend at the waist, you are going to be hovering over them. You may even kind of do that T-stance aspect. So we definitely want to bend at our knees and kind of crouch down. The main thing we want to remind you about crouching down is for some dogs, especially larger dogs, by crouching down, you are putting your face at their face level. So you really want to be mindful of that, offering your side instead, so you're not full facing them. And then just make sure if they come up to your face that you kind of move it away, try to redirect them from your face. Again, avoid the T-stance when putting on the leash. So the best way to do that is just off your side and kind of bend over slightly to leash. Don't go forward when you do it. Don't grab the collar, even if the dog is trying to escape the kennel. Do not grab the collar. That is a best way for you to get bitten, have them turn around, try to bite you. And also do not hug. So you may have dogs at home that are very tolerant of hugging. But if you were to ever see your dog when they're being hugged, they would look a lot like this dog in the picture. They may be tolerant of it, but they aren't enjoying it. So again, if your dog does it, do it at home. But here, we don't want you to hug the dogs. The only time that you would put a dog in this situation is if you are restraining for vaccinations, if you're restraining for blood draws, or if you have a euthanasia shift. You might have to restrain in this kind of way. But in general, we don't want you just to go up and hug a dog. And then lastly, when in doubt, don't proceed. Especially if you are new to animal welfare, you're new to working with dogs. If you are uncomfortable, don't try to push past it. Go ahead and get yourself some help. Get another staff maybe. Maybe someone is more familiar with that dog and that dog may be a little bit more comfortable with them. And then whatever needs to be done would be easier to do versus you just trying to make it happen. Okay, so let's practice whoa. So again, whoa means watch the dog, observe the body language, assess what you see, and act accordingly. So I'm going to show you a couple of videos. I'm going to have you watch the video first, and then we'll kind of talk through what we are seeing. So the first thing I notice is the dog is kind of hunched over, doing a little sideways stare. One of the ears held back, one is not. And then here you're starting to see the baring of the teeth. So this is not a submissive grin. You can see more of the wrinkling in the nose. So this dog is definitely stressed out, but again, never turns its body to face you. So based on what you're seeing, what would you classify this dog as? Comfortable, fearful, assertive, or offensive? Hopefully you guys are leaning towards fearful. So this dog is definitely stressed out and showing a higher level of fear. I would call more fearful but defensive. So if I were to enter this kennel, this dog could escalate based on what it's showing me. So the main thing to think about is how would you act? So some common things, if you are standing right at the gate and you're full frontal facing yourself, go ahead and offer your side. Get down low. Even though this dog is showing defensive postures, by getting down low outside the kennel, you still have the kennel door to protect you, so the dog won't be able to advance and do anything. But just even that simple of turning your side or getting down low may change the dog's behavior. Talk softly, go slow. I would probably use treats with this dog to see if I could get this dog to kind of settle before I would move forward. If I don't have to do something with this dog, maybe I'm just stopping by to check waters and stuff, then I would just move along and leave this dog alone. So here's another video. So let's talk about what we see. So upon approach, you're getting that alert barking, got some growls going on. The dog does make a good choice to move away, but still doing a lot of alert barking. Ears are perked. Does do a lip lick, which we'll talk about in a second. And then kind of here at the end, you start to see that tail move, but it's kind of a stiff wag. So even though, again, I got a tail wag, I'm not going to assume that that dog is now relaxed enough that I could just automatically enter the kennel. So with those different body postures that we just talked about, thinking about the different types, comfortable, fearful, assertive, offensive, hopefully you're leaning more towards that assertive, offensive dog. So probably more that offensive aspect, you just approach, they aren't really waiting to see what you're gonna do, they're just gonna start reacting right away. So how would you act with this dog? Kind of the same things you just did with the fearful guy. So if you're standing facing the front, offer your side, get down low, talk softly. The good thing about this dog in particular is he did make a good choice. He chose to go to the other side of the kennel to kind of put some distance between you and him. And did start to kind of relax a little, doing some lip licks, trying to calm himself down. So with this dog, you may be able to continually proceed, going really slow, offering those treats. But if I were to open this door and this dog would then start to come forward again, I would want to change what I'm doing. Or again, if I don't have to interact with this dog, I would want to leave it alone altogether. The main thing, unfortunately, is certain times of the year, we do have a higher level of population with dogs, and they're not always given that full kennel. So dogs don't always have the ability to create that distance. So if you are working with a dog that's housed on just only one side of a guillotine kennel, keep that in mind that making good choices to move away is great, but not always is a dog given that opportunity. So when you start to come in on a kennel with a dog that's only in a half side, really be mindful of those changes in behaviors because you yourself aren't going to have a lot of room to move away from them. Okay, so now we're going to talk about greetings. So there's two types of greetings. There's friendly greetings and what a dog may perceive as a threatening greeting. So with friendly greetings, what we want to make sure, again, is getting down low is the best way. In the first picture, the larger one, you will see that the lady got down and she's offering a side. And then the dog was able to make that choice to approach on its own. The other picture, you will see that the lady is still kneeling down and seems more full frontal facing. But again, she got down low and she gave the dog the choice if wanted to approach or not. And the dog just chose to approach more of that full on way. That is something to keep in mind when, again, you get down low, you are now at their level. So if they do approach you pretty fast on, you want to make sure that you are also kneeling down so that if needed, you can easily stand back up. Because a dog may be approaching you happy and go lucky, but may get aroused quickly and start to jump and then your face is there. Or a dog may be feeling a little bit more offensive and does approach you quickly. And now you're full straight on with that dog. And so you want to be able to stand back up. So we do recommend when you get down low that you do it more of a kneeling, not a sit down. For threatening postures, in all these pictures, you can see that the lady is more hovering. So she's bending more at her waist. She's also going straight out to try to pet that dog at the top of the head. So we do recommend that you offer your hand underneath and kind of lower to allow them to sniff. But if I was hovering and still offer my hand underneath, that dog is still going to see me as threatening simply because I'm bending at the waist and hovering. So if I need to stand up straight, I just want to make sure that I'm going more from my side and then I'm offering my hand appropriately, not just going straight in for that pet. Some things that dogs will do when they do perceive you as a threat, potentially based on your approach, is what we call calming signals. So these are behaviors that reduce stress. So one of them we saw in that last video with the dog doing that lip lick. So that was, again, a way for that dog to kind of reduce its stress. Some other things you're gonna see are yawning. Maybe they are starting to groom or scratch. They may be scratching at their collar, or that classic shake off. So these behaviors may by themselves be more normal, but if they're happening when you are engaging with that animal, or say they're engaging with another dog during a dog visit, it is definitely more a sign of stress and something definitely to keep in mind and potentially alter your body language again to kind of reduce the stress for that dog. Some other behaviors that you will see when a dog feels threatened is something that we call displacement signals. So these are behaviors that are designed more to avoid conflict. So these are things that the dog's gonna do for the other dog potentially, or for the person to maybe kind of get the idea that this dog doesn't want to engage, and hopefully they will leave. So some common things is they may go lay down or sit kind of off to the side, making themselves look a little bit more smaller. So again, more of that appeasement aspect. They may be quick to sniff the ground, and this could seem pretty excessive. So you're walking outside, you're seeing some, fearful postures from your dog. Your dog has got the ears back, tail tucked, and then every few feet they are stopping to sniff. Yes, there are a lot of great smells out there for dogs to sniff around, but if you have a dog that's just showing a lot of fear and is quick to sniff a lot, it may be more that that dog is doing a displacement behavior as opposed to just sniffing every wonderful smell. We see this commonly when we are having dogs meet new people. They may walk around the room, the visiting room, and just never really engage with the person, and then they're kind of checking out every corner. They may go back to that spot again. And again, it's just for them to find something to do in a stressful situation. Some other things they may do, just kind of standing there, maybe silently gazing off, and you're kind of like, what are you looking at, buddy? But again, if you're trying to get them to engage with you and all they do is look everywhere but you, that may be more displacement. Drinking. So I see this commonly when you have multiple dogs. They're playing really well, things are going fine, but then you can kind of see one getting a little bit more stressed. They keep constantly going to the water bowl. So again, if it's a hot day and they're playing really, really hard, it may be going to the water bowl because they are hot. But if you find that they're still excessive about it, they just go get a drink and then come back, go get a drink. One, they're making a really good choice to disengage, but two, they are looking for something to do. So that drinking water may be the thing they're looking to do. And then lastly, urination and defecation. So same idea. If you have a dog that has to stop every few feet to urinate, they may be marking their territory. But if they're showing a lot of fearful postures, that they're just overall stressed, they may be purposely holding on to their pee so that they can pee every few feet because they're, again, looking for something to do. Okay, so that is body postures, theirs and ours. So again, these are just things to keep in mind when you are dealing with these different dogs here at the shelter. Some things are gonna change based on also location, so keeping that in mind. We do have areas that are a little bit quieter that may change some of those postures versus if they're in one of the rooms that are pretty loud, maybe showing a higher level of fear. So keep that in mind even when you're engaging with dogs. 1 week they may be one way, the next week you happen to come across them and they're a little bit better. And that may simply be because they're getting used to this environment, but it could also be maybe they changed their kennel and now they're feeling a little less stressed. Okay, so now we're gonna go on more and talk about proper techniques, policy procedures, things like that. So the first thing we're gonna talk about is leash handling. So for those of you who have dealt with dogs before, maybe you have your own dog at home. When we talk about leash handling, it's not by any means to say that you don't know how to handle a leash. We just want you to make sure that you're keeping some things in mind more from a safety perspective. So the first thing we wanna talk about is leash type. So here at the Dumb Friends League, we do use slip leashes only when it comes to moving dogs around, be it walking from a kennel to another or walking a dog outside. The reason we use slip leashes is because it's really easy to get the leash on without actually hovering to clip, so no T-stancing. Temporary leashes are also easy to clean, and so we can, for contagion purposes, we can easily throw these temporary leashes into the washer. When walking dogs around different places, we do ask that if you walk a dog outside, that you use more of an actual 6-foot slip leash, so like the yellow one on the bottom, as opposed to a temporary leash. Temporary leashes are okay when we walk dogs from one kennel to another. We also send home dogs with temporary leashes, but they're just not as safe and secure, and they're pretty short. They're about 3 feet long. And so when you have to go for an actual walk, make sure you use a good 6-foot slip leash. We will on occasion use different types of leashes for dogs. So you might see a dog walker walking a dog with a chain leash, or they may have a normal leash, but it's connected to a harness, like a no-pull harness. So these are acceptable for some dogs given a situation, but they do need to be approved. So we don't want all dogs on harnesses or all dogs on chain leashes. We don't have enough chain leashes for every dog to have one, but really they're only needed when you have a dog that's quick to chew on a regular slip leash. The chain leash can kind of help deter that behavior. But again, these extra things do need to be approved by behavior. So then let's talk about technique. So again, this is not to say that you don't know how to hold a leash. This is just the way that we would like you to hold it here. So you have 2 options. You can put just your thumb through and then hold onto the leash like the top picture is showing you, or you can put all of your hand through the leash and then clasp around it. The main thing we don't want you to do is put your whole hand through the leash and then wrap it around. And that's, again, a safety thing. So if you were walking a dog and a dog saw something they wanted to go visit, or a rabbit and they want to chase it, if you have it wrapped around your hand, you're going to go with that dog and you're going to be pulled down on the ground. Maybe it happens on the stairs and you're pulled down the stairs. So by doing these 2 techniques, either on your thumb or just your fingers, it allows you to be able to pull your hand back quickly. Yes, that means the dog may get loose, but it is better than you being pulled on the ground or drugged behind a dog. So make sure that you keep these in mind when you are transporting a dog, again, around the kennel areas, to one kennel to another, but also when you're going outside. Some other things we want to talk about with the leashing is leash wraps. So even when we use those no-pull harnesses, it's more just kind of a safety thing for us to allow the dog to be able to still pull, but have them, not slip out or anything like that. Because here at the shelter, we're not so worried about them pulling. We just want to keep them from maybe choking themselves. And so an easy way to do that is actually by creating a leash wrap with the slip leash. And this works best if you have that 6-foot slip leash. So when you are moving dogs around the shelter, or if you take a dog outside, any dog that pulls, no matter what size, so even that Chihuahua that is pulling, we want to make a slip leash or a slip leash wrap for it. And the reason that is because it keeps the dog from choking themselves. So leash wraps are not just for pulling purposes to keep us from being pulled around. It is to help the dog so it's not choking on their neck. When placing your leash wrap, try to avoid hovering, try to avoid that T stance, get down low with the dog. And then the main thing to keep in mind when creating your leash wrap is where you place the leash part. And I'm going to show you a video in just a second. If you don't push it up between where the thing that goes around the neck, you're not going to be able to drop that leash down onto the chest. And so really being mindful of where you come up with the leash. And then if you can't pull the leash part down on the neck, then you know that it is done wrong. And the best thing to do with these leash wraps is definitely to practice them. So here's the video on how best to place a leash wrap. So as you can see, she went around behind the front feet and up through the part that goes around the neck. And then that allows her to be able to kind of pull the part around the neck closer on lower on the chest. So again, it keeps that dog from choking. Okay, so now let's move on to getting in and out of a kennel. So the first thing we wanted to remind people about is you always want to go fully into the kennel, especially if you're going to be removing this dog. If you try to leash a dog at the door with the door open and you standing outside of it, all you are doing is creating a door darter who thinks every time the door opens, they're going to be able to run out. By going all the way in, shutting the door, and then leashing or unleashing, you are helping to prevent a behavior, the door darting behavior, from being created. Some things to keep in mind with these different kennel areas is they're all a little bit different on what type of door they have. Do they have a guillotine or not? So when you're dealing with the adoptable pods, some of them do have a guillotine, but when we're full, again, we're not able to use those kennels in that way. So usually there's going to be one dog per. So there really isn't a way to shift those dogs. So make sure that, again, you are fully entering. If the dog is jumping on you, we do encourage you to wait for the dog to get off. They don't have to actually sit down, but we do want to make sure that they're not jumping up or barking a lot when you go to leash. When you first enter any kennel, we do recommend that you stay upright. Don't automatically get down low. Again, you want to do that whole aspect of whoa. Whoa is something that you do outside the kennel, but it is also something to keep in mind when you enter a kennel, because again, that behavior may change. And then it is okay to use treats to distract. You can use treats to get the dog to move away from the door as you're first entering. You can also distract the dog with treats when you're going to exit. That way they're not trying to follow you. The Flex-A kennels, so those are the ones that have the glass side on them. The main thing about them is their doors are actually pretty heavy. They can be hard to open, and they're also kind of slow when they are shutting. So really be mindful of those doors when you're entering or exiting, especially if you have a dog. You don't want to get your fingers or the dog's tail caught. Again, stay upright, use treats if needed. And then if you're having issues, especially if there's multiple dogs crowding the door, it is okay to also get some help. And then the last set of kennels, these are all guillotine kennels. So foster kennels, dog overflow, DHC, Flex B and C are lower dogs, and then our dog behavior kennels. All of these guys do have guillotine gates. Obviously, keep in mind the time of year, they may not be able to use both sides of that gate. So definitely remembering to stay upright, especially if you only have half of that gate. It's okay to also use treats in these kennels as well to distract the dog. Okay, so now we're going to kind of give you some additional tips in specific situations. So the first one we want to talk about is when you have two dogs. So the main thing is if a dog is jumping when you first enter, especially if they're both jumping, hopefully that's not the case. Make sure that they have their feet on the floor before you leash them. It's also okay to use treats in this situation, but the thing you want to be really mindful of is treats can lead to dog fights. And so you wouldn't want to ever walk away with treats still left on the ground. But even when you're tossing them, you really want to make sure that there is no fighting. So if you have to toss treats, kind of toss them some over here and some over there so that both dogs separate to go get the treats. And then before you leave entirely, I would pick up any uneaten treats so that, again, a fight doesn't occur when you walk away. So let me show you this video of how to kind of deal with two dogs at the same time. I'm going to play it one more time and kind of just point out some features. So in this case, luckily only one dog was jumping on me, but sometimes both of them are. And they kind of both backed up from the door. So I just waited for that guy to get off and leashed him. And then using the treats to distract the other dog. So I don't have to worry about this point if the other dog chooses to eat. My main goal is to get the dog to just move away so I can easily slip out with the one dog that I need. When I come back, if my single dog was still crying on the door, I can always use treats to get that dog to move back. So I come in this case, the other dog was still pretty calm, so I was able to easily unleash. And then there were still treats left over from when I first put them in, so I just utilized them. But before I fully walked away, you don't really see it in the video, I did make sure all the treats were eaten so that these guys wouldn't get into a fight potentially when I was completely gone. So treats are going to be helpful. Especially if the dogs actually eat them. If I had more than two dogs in the kennel, then it does become a little bit more challenging, especially if they're all small dogs. And again, using treats is okay, but now I have more dogs that potentially get into a fight. So I really want to be mindful if I choose to use treats in that situation. Okay, so just some additional tips when you go to the Flex kennel. Again, fully entering, being mindful of not hovering when you're putting on the leash. If the dog is pulling already, as soon as you put on the leash, they like pull to the door. You can place the leash wrap in the kennel. If you don't choose to do it there, another great place to do it is as you're starting to go to another room, or if you're taking the dog outside, when you stop at an actual door, if your dog is distracted enough at that door, you can place the leash wrap. And then again, treats are great in this kennel because that door is kind of wonky, it's kind of heavy and slow to shut, that it will allow the dog to be away from the door and allow you to easily be able to enter. So let me show you this video. Okay, let me show you one more time and I'll kind of talk you through things. So if you've never used these flex kennels, the punch code does not always work. So sometimes your dog is at the front anticipating you coming in and you're having a hard time getting in. So if I needed, I could have thrown treats, but luckily I didn't have to. So again, staying upright to leash. And then when I came back, sometimes same thing, you're trying to get in the door and it's not working. And so you really have to work on it. There may be other dogs kind of crowding the door. So if you need to use treats. So luckily this girl was very cooperative. I was able to throw treats away as I exited the room. So again, remember, just stay upright, use treats when needed. But these are great to get help for if you have multiple dogs, because those doors can be kind of a pain in the butt, that you may find that a dog is trying to slip out as you're trying to get in, either just to get the dog to begin with or trying to return the other dog. Okay, and so additional tips for your guillotine kennels. So if the dogs have the full kennel, both sides, if you are able to separate your dogs out, especially if you have 5 little dogs in there, that does make things a little bit easier. The other thing you can use the guillotine for is if you have a dog that kind of keeps running back and forth between both sides, you can always shut the guillotine to keep the dog on the same side as you. Keep in mind, though, you have taken away that dog's ability to run away to increase the distance. So you do want to be mindful of changes in body postures and change your body postures if you're noticing a higher level of fear. When entering these kennels, we do recommend that you open the door inwards. It kind of acts as a barrier to kind of keep your dog from darting out. If you were to open it outwards, it really just kind of opens everything up. And then something to keep in mind when leashing small dogs in any kennel is, again, getting down low and making sure that you're offering your side so you're coming off as less threatening. So let's take a look at this video. So I did go ahead and close the guillotine just to keep this little guy from running. Here's where I use the door to push it inwards, and I also use my body to block. Getting down low to leash your dog. When walking away from a guillotine kennel, please always shut it. We don't want other dogs to try to run into these open kennels for contagion purposes. When you're coming back, it's okay to open the door outwards. And then right here, there are locks inside the kennel doors that you can lock. I would encourage you, if you have a dog that's showing you concerning behaviors, that you don't fully lock yourself, that you just put the latch out and use it as a way to keep the door from going in and out. And then lastly, when you do the guillotine, if you close it, make sure you do open it up back for your dog to be able to go back to that other side. Okay, so those are the different kennels. So hopefully you'll have a chance, depending on what your job is, to experience all the different kennels. But remember, they're all a little bit different based on guillotine, the type of door that they have, and also the size of the kennel that they have. Guillotine specifically, downstairs, the lower dogs, LDE actually has bigger kennels than the rest of the ones. So space may change depending on what kennel you go to. So now we're going to talk about stairs. So depending on what your job is, you may find yourself having to do stairs around the buildings. Some of our buildings do not have stairs, so you may not actually have to worry about this. But if you do, if you work here more at our Malone Center, you are going to experience stairs potentially at some point in your career here. So the main thing we want you to remember is do not pick dogs up that are over 30 pounds. Dogs that are larger, they are not used to it. They may struggle, they may get scared, and you could potentially hurt yourself. So only pick up dogs that are under 30 pounds. However, do not assume just because you have a dog that's under 30 pounds that you can pick it up. And what that means is not all small dogs are used to being picked up, or they may have had bad experiences getting picked up, and they may struggle when picked up, or they may try to bite you when you go to pick them up. So again, you can pick up a dog under 30 pounds, but don't assume that the dog is going to allow you to do it. If you have the time to help your dog get comfortable with stairs, that would be great. Using treats, using verbal encouragement to go up and down, that is really going to help the dog in the long run, because a lot of people who adopt these dogs do have stairs in their home. So it kind of gives them a start to learning that stairs aren't so scary. Thing to keep in mind from the dog's perspective is going down is actually scarier than going up. Going down makes them feel like they're going to fall forward. So if you have a dog that doesn't do stairs, they may not go down the stairs, but I would encourage you to try to see if they will go up the stairs when you come back, because it may be less scary for them. If you cannot get your dog to go up and down stairs, then unfortunately you will have to go a different exit. We do have elevators throughout the building. We have the ramp that's over by the dog behavior kennels. You could also potentially go through the lobby. I would be mindful about going through the lobby when we're open, because patrons may try to say hi to your dog, and if that dog is not available, that does make things a little more challenging for the adoption staff if they're having to explain why you can't actually meet with that dog. But again, going a different exit is okay. If you are going a different exit, the other thing we want you to keep in mind is you may be going against traffic. And what that means is dog walkers in particular, they do have a path that they need to follow when it comes to taking dogs out and coming back in. If you are going to the elevator specifically, you are going to be going against traffic and you might run into dog walkers. So just really be mindful of what's ahead of you and communicate clearly that you are coming that way with the dog. Okay, so let's talk about loose dog. So this may happen sometime in your career, in animal welfare in general, but here at the Dumb Friends League. We do have a lot of dogs that come through our shelter in a lot of different situations, and sometimes they do happen to get loose. So the main thing that we want you to remember is remain calm, don't panic. It is okay. We can try to get this dog back. People can help you with this. So just don't stress out as much if the dog gets loose. This is where, like I said, we don't want you to try to grab the dog. We'd rather you just let the dog go and work on trying to get the dog back. So the first thing we want you to keep in mind is the whole idea of stop. And stop really refers to these signs that we have placed around in all the dog areas. So essentially, we want you to, again, not try to grab the dog, just stop what you're doing, yell loose dog really loud, grab that leash, tell someone if you need some help, organize a plan to determine the best way to catch this dog, and then obviously put that plan in motion. So that is your stop aspect. After you've yelled loose dog, we do also want you to change the sign on the door. So all the doors have signs on them that you can flip from okay to enter to loose animal. We do ask that you change that sign. However, if you have a dog that's trying to get out, like you go to open that door and it's trying to sneak past you and you're not able to put that leash on just yet, then I would be cautious about opening the door just to change the sign, but that is the best way to communicate to other people that there is a loose dog in that room. Again, grab a leash. You do not want to catch a loose dog with just your bare hands. You do need a leash, so even just a temporary leash to get that dog back. Approach the dog in those friendly greetings, the non-threatening greetings. If you were to rush on that dog, if you're getting impatient because they've been running around the kennel gate, and then you directly approach that dog may escalate, may bare its teeth, growl, or may try to bite. And so we want to make sure that we don't rush up on the dog. We're getting down low, offering our side. Once the dog has been safely re-kenneled, then we do ask that you go change the sign to okay to enter so that people know that they can come back into that room. So let's break down loose dog a little bit more. So say you hear loose dog and you actually happen to have a dog yourself. The main thing that you need to focus on is the dog that you have. So you want to try to get that dog somewhere else. That way the two dogs don't come across each other and potentially get into a fight, especially because your dog's on leash and the other dog is not on leash, and so essentially not on equal terms. So some common areas you could go to is you could go back into the kennel that you just came out of. If you were about to enter a door, you could step back out and shut that door. The main thing though, if you open any door that leaves the kennel area, is that loose dog may try to follow you. So if you choose to go that route, like you're just about to exit already and you're like, I'm just gonna complete the exit, make sure that dog is not coming behind you and trying to escape as well. If you hear loose dog and you do not have a dog, then we do ask that if you have time, please help. It may be challenging to catch a dog inside. Again, they may be running around the kennel areas. Maybe a volunteer who's trying to do it and may just need a little bit of help. If you choose to help, then please, please, please make sure you have appropriate equipment. And in this case, usually it's gonna just mean a leash. When it comes to actually leashing, please make sure only one person is trying to leash. If everyone is trying to throw that leash on as the dog darts around, that is going to make that dog way more stressed and more likely to run away. So just have one person kind of committed to being the person who leashes. And then a big part of what you're gonna do if you do come to help is really kind of just being that barrier. You're gonna keep the dog from running around the kennels by kind of just body blocking them so the other person can essentially come up and leash them. An easy way inside, if you can't get them to run back in their kennel, if there is an extra kennel, like a cleaning kennel, you can always try to get the dog to run into that kennel because smaller space can be easier to actually get that leash on than if they have the entire room. So something else to keep in mind. Okay, so what do you do if you hear a loose dog and you are outside? Help if you can, but we do want to make sure that not too many people are coming to help. Can you imagine if you're a loose dog and there's like 10 people running after you? That's going to be really, really stressful. So not everybody needs to help. If you see that there are already people out there helping, then just go on and about your day. If you were leaving, go ahead and leave. If you were outside, but you can go back to your job, please do. If you do end up helping, the main thing to remember is do not chase. If you start chasing, this dog is going to take off and is probably going to leave DFL property and be running in traffic. And so we definitely don't want to chase the dog. Instead, we want you to be that barrier. So standing any area that the dog can get off and get onto some street, just go up to that and do that whole body blocking and keep that dog back. Don't try to leash as it runs towards you. Literally just be the barrier that keeps the dog on actual DFL property and safer, because it's going to be easier for us to catch that dog if we can get it into a smaller enclosed area versus if it does get onto the main street. Have appropriate equipment. So if you don't have a leash, then you should not be trying to touch that dog in any capacity, because if you were to try to grab it, that dog is more than likely going to turn and bite. So instead, if you don't have a leash, just be a barrier. If you do have a leash, then again, if the dog comes close enough, you can leash, but you don't need 3 people trying to leash. The best way to catch any dog that's loose, be it inside or outside, is again to get them into a smaller space. So here at the Malone Center, you can try to get it, if it's not in the friendship circle, get it into the friendship circle. If it's in the friendship circle, get it into a small play yard. If you are close to either one of the garages, the maintenance garage or the transfer garage, and you can get it to run into there, even better. At different areas like the Buddy Center, if you have a dog that's running around and they're up front, say an adopter just dropped the leash accidentally, try to get that dog into the back area that is actually gated so you can then shut the gate and get the dog enclosed. If the dog is already back there, try to get them to run into the garage. So if you can pressure them into a smaller space, you're gonna have a better chance of actually getting that leash on. However, still remember your friendly greetings. You don't want to rush up a dog that has just been running around outside and now is in an enclosed area, because that may escalate that dog. So try to get in a smaller space and then go slow with the actual leashing part. If a dog has left DFL property, then if somebody is able and willing, the best thing to do is actually have somebody get in their car. A bunch of people could easily be following this dog on foot. However, again, it may be perceived more as being chased. And so having someone who can locate the dog in a car is going to be less stressful, and it'll also keep that dog in your line of sight. Some of these dogs can be super fast. So even if people were trying to keep up with it on foot, there's a huge chance that you're going to lose that dog because, again, we are just not fast like dogs are. So having someone in the car just to be able to keep an eye on and communicate where that dog is, other people can always come meet up and try to catch that dog. Okay, so now let's move on to dog fights. So dog fights do occur. It is nothing against you if it occurs on your watch. You know, stress can cause it, treats can cause it, a lot of things can cause it. The main thing is, again, how you react. Just like with the loose dog, you don't want to panic during a dog fight. So when it comes to a dog fight, there's two kind of types. There's ones that are really, really noisy that you can hear at the other end of the room. And there's the ones that you don't hear at all. The ones that are noisy are often just a big show and there's no injury caused. Often, sadly, the ones that nobody hears are the ones that tend to lead to more injury. If you do hear a dog fight, please, please, please go investigate. Don't assume somebody else's, especially if you just came from that kennel and you maybe did leave a treat accidentally. Go check on that and make sure that they are no longer fighting, but also be able to, once it's done, you can always remove the treats or the toys or whatever may have caused that tension. If you approach it and they are actually still fighting, then the best thing to do is just bang on the kennel door, make a lot of noise, clap your hands, try to interrupt them with just noise. If that doesn't work, the next thing we recommend is to get the hose and spray them. Please only spray up to 10 seconds. You spraying longer than that means it's not working and we need to try something else. If that isn't working, then the next thing that we want you to do is actually get help. At this point, we may need a couple people involved to try to get these dogs to not fight anymore. If it does work, then what we do want you to do is just kind of take a look at the dogs. You know, are they okay? Is any injury caused? But also we want you to consider, do these dogs need to be separated? Some fights are just simple and the dogs are fine after that. However, some fights aren't that great, and as soon as you start to step away, they may start to fight again, and that means the dogs might need to be fully separated altogether. If you choose to leave them together and you believe it was due to resources, then we may need to, at the very least, put a separate to feed sign so that we aren't feeding them together anymore. Okay, so say a dog fight occurs and you happen to be in the kennel with them. The main thing that we want you to do is get out. Your safety is number one. Do not try to stop that dog fight with you in the vicinity. Especially in a kennel, there's not a lot of space. If they are fighting and they accidentally bump into your leg, one of them may sadly redirect onto your leg. So the best thing for you to do is to get out of that space. If you are outside when the dogs are fighting, they should have their leashes on, and so utilize their leashes to kind of pull them apart. You never want to try to get into a dog fight and use your hands to separate them out. The leashes are going to be the best way to kind of try to pull them apart from each other. However, dogs should not be together outside and be able to fight unless you're doing dog testing or maybe a patron visit, a patron's dog is meeting with one of our dogs. That should be the only time that you actually have two dogs together outside. If it does occur again, utilize those leashes. After a fight, be it in the kennel or outside, again, check both dogs for wounds. Some classic areas are going to be the ears might have some wounds, the face, the neck, those kind of areas. If you find any wounds, the best thing to do is take the dog to veterinary services, get them looked at right then and there. We don't want it to get infected and have them wait to be looked at a little bit later. If injury was caused, then I would separate the dogs out. I mean, that was a pretty extreme fight that injury happened to occur, that we don't want those dogs to stay together because we don't want them to get to the point where they injure each other again. The other thing to keep in mind is if a dog has gotten into a fight, we do want to dog test that dog to make sure it's still safe to put up. So go take a look at Chameleon and see if that dog has already been tested. If it has not been tested, then you do want to put it on a P1 hold so that we can test it. And again, that's just to make sure that dog is safe and we can continue to put that dog up for adoption. Or we may change something. It doesn't mean a dog test automatically means a dog is not going to be able to be adoptions. We may ultimately just decide that it's a mandatory single dog home. Okay, so let's talk about dog bites. So bites do occur, especially in a stressful situation like an animal shelter. Some of the reasons why dogs ultimately bite is mishandling can be a big one. So improper restraint, or again, trying to grab a loose dog because you might be panicking. Some other reasons, rushing. So just trying to get through your job as quickly as possible because again, you have a lot of other dogs to take care of. That may ultimately result in a bite. And then the other main thing, which we kind of talked about earlier, is high arousal. That is a common reason that we get bites here in the shelter, from them just jumping, being mouthy, and utilizing their mouth to the point that they are breaking skin. We do want to point out that if a dog wants to bite you and cause injury, they will. Dogs have what's called bite inhibition, which means they can choose what level. So the whole idea is that if you say the dog almost bit me, that is not true because the dog chose to not bite you. If they wanted to bite you, they would bite you. They would also injure you if they wanted to. So sometimes they may just kind of apply pressure. Other times they may increase that pressure to the point where they are breaking the skin. But again, that is a choice that that dog made. Some other things to keep in mind when it comes to dog bites is dogs do give warning signs, but sometimes they are either subtle or we are not necessarily paying attention. And before we know it, the dog has put their mouth on us and actually bitten and broken skin. So that is why the whole idea of behavior is fluid. You need to always be watching your dog. If you're changing something about the environment, if you're introducing two dogs, all those stressors may also lead to a dog to escalate quicker. And then keep in mind the whole idea of speed of reaction, that these dogs can escalate pretty quick. The time it takes you to think about pulling your hand away, the dog would have already bitten you if they wanted. You are not faster than a dog. So that's why you really just want to be paying attention to your dog the whole time, paying attention to changes in body postures. If you're putting your dog in a situation like a dog test, really being prepared to act if they get into a fight, to separate. It's partly why we vary some of our dog tests. We do protective tests between the fence, and that is to help kind of prevent some of the escalation with biting the other dog or potentially redirecting onto us. So really just pay attention to your dog from beginning to end so that you can prepare and hopefully prevent a bite. What to do if bitten? So the most important thing is to take care of yourself. Any bite, no matter if it's a small tooth scrape or an actual puncture, you need to clean that bite really, really, really good and apply some first aid. There are those first aid kits around the shelter. Hopefully you have one in your specific area. Another place to go is Veterinary Services does have some of those surgical scrubs that you can go scrub it out really, really good. And then you can always put some first aid, like a Band-Aid or something after it. If the dog is a loose dog that bit, then obviously we need help securing it. But if the dog is in a kennel that it can no longer stay in, so unfortunately when a dog bites, it does have to go on a 10-day bite quarantine. So say an available dog just bit, we would have to relocate that dog to a different kennel. And so definitely communicate that to the appropriate people so we can move that dog or secure that dog. Go see your manager as well. So unfortunately, every bite does need to be reported. Even if it's just a minor tooth scrape, we do need to report it. And then depending on the level of bite, you and your manager can decide if you need to go seek medical care at one of our urgent facilities. Dog bites are not 100% required. It's really more of the severity of the bite and maybe even the location of the bite that may require you to go to urgent care. So basically what we want to then do is to prevent bites from occurring. So we want to make sure that we don't put a dog in a situation that they are going to bite, because again, they have to go under that 10-day bite quarantine, which imagine a little puppy that's in its prime socialization period, super friendly. It bites accidentally, maybe it went for a toy and got your hand instead. That puppy still has to go on that bite quarantine, and that's 10 days of no interaction. So we really want to try to help prevent bites so these dogs aren't put in those situations. So the best way to do that is avoid handling an animal you are not required to. So for instance, puppies. As you walk around the kennels, you may see these cute little puppies and you want to go in there and engage with them. Well, that may be the time that one of those puppies accidentally bites you. And even though it was an accident, again, it still needs to go 10-day bite quarantine. So if you don't have to interact with that puppy, please don't interact with that puppy. Some other things to do is practice proper restraint. So if you are new to working with animals, especially animals in a shelter environment, and you're just not good at handling just yet because you haven't really done a lot of it, then please practice. Practice wherever you can. We actually, in behavior, have some stuffed animals that you can practice some of those different restraints on to at least help you get more comfortable on where you place your hands and stuff before you actually have to go restrain a live animal. Some other things to keep in mind, slow down. So I know I've been saying that throughout this whole safe animal handling thing, but slowing down is really going to help you. If you rush, you're going to stress your dog out and you're going to cause them potentially escalate more. Practice whoa. Practice whoa before you enter a kennel. Practice whoa when you enter a kennel. Practice whoa when you're outside and you're introducing to another dog or you're introducing to a patron. Really be mindful of what that dog is already showing you. That way you can act differently, or you can ask the patrons to act differently so that you can help prevent a bite. And then lastly, use your safety equipment. We have different types of equipment and for different types of situations that can allow you to stay safe, but still do your actual job. So let's talk about that safety equipment. So these are approved safety equipment. So what that means is DFL has approved these and only these. We don't want you to be coming in with something that maybe you use at a different shelter. If you have used something at a different shelter and it worked, then just take it to your manager. We can always discuss and see if that is going to be an appropriate tool. But right now, we do ask that you only use these specific items. So toweling is a great first step to anything. Especially when it comes to little dogs, you can easily just put that towel over them and pick them up if you need to. You can put a towel over a dog's head if you need to vaccinate. So towels are great to start with. They're definitely less invasive. Some other things, we do have a variety of different poles. These poles are going to be a little bit more scarier. So make sure that if you end up having to use a pole, that you also use the right pole for the right situation. We have a catch pole, a leash pole, and a Y pole. And then we also have these things called baffle boards, which are just these big plastic things that I'm going to show you in just a second. So I'm going to go through each of these different ones individually and show you a few videos for some of them. So the first one we're going to start with is the towel. So in this one, we're going to show you a video that has a veterinarian called Dr. Sophia Yen. She uses the towel to be able to restrain a dog for some medical procedures. So I'm just going to have you guys watch this. What you'll find is if you are in a position that you need to restrain dogs like this is a great technique to also practice.
This dog Lola is also a foster dog that's aggressive both at the vet and when the foster mother wants to handle her.
That scares her.
Lola won't allow being picked up, so we use the towel method. It's important for the towel to be snug around her neck. If it's not snug enough, remove it and try again. She's eating treats because we asked the foster mom to withhold food before dropping her off. We give her treats before and after placing the towel. It's probably best to stop treating while lifting her up, since she may still see the person giving treats as a threat. We place a leash muzzle, and then I start my examination. She doesn't try to struggle, so I continue the examination without the leash muzzle. I can feel her relax when I pet her playfully. We're able to draw her blood by lifting the towel. We can also clean her ears. Note that even though Lola has a muzzle on, this technician could still get bitten if he has his fingers in the wrong place. Lola does not struggle. When she's done, I put her on the floor. Is she better or worse? I pick her up with no problems. She's improved.
Okay, so the next piece of equipment we're going to go on to is the catch pole. So the catch pole is something that you could potentially use. Something that we do want to talk about when it comes to the catch pole is not every job requires you to use a catch pole. So if you are in a job that you don't need to, we don't want you to just to go grab the catch pole. Some specific jobs that would require that, maybe pet admissions, populations, or if you are back in our euthanasia or 315, then you can use that catch pole. If you have never used a catch pole, though, I'm going to encourage you to go get your manager or somebody else to help you your first time that you use a catch pole. But again, only if you are in a specific job that requires it do we want you to use the catch pole. So when would you use a catch pole? The best reason is if you have a dog that is way more forward. So they're quick to growl, they're snarling, they're lunging at you, and you need to either get a dog out of a night kennel, or you need to move a dog from one kennel to another, or maybe it's in one of the patron visiting rooms at time of relinquishment and the patron has now left and you need to go in there and the dog is being more forward, then you can go ahead and use that catch pole. The how is pretty simple. There is a metal cord on the end. You just want to slip that over the dog's head and then pull the cord tight. And then the where, if you do need a catch pole, the classic areas to go. Pet admissions usually has some in their different closets. 315 has a pair. And then cage wash is always a good place because after it is used, it is always taken to cage wash. So go into one of those three areas to get yourself a catch pole. So I am going to show you how to use this catch pole. If you've never used one before, I would encourage you to practice. And again, we do have those stuffed animals. So here, as you can see, she put the cord over the head and then she pulled tight by pulling the cord at the end. To unlock it, there is a little piece at the end that moves around. You basically pull that back and the cord then pops forward and loosens it up, and then you can take it off. So the next one we're going to talk about is the leash pull. So the leash pull comparative to the catch pole is a little less scary. When you are putting it on a dog, it looks like a normal slip leash. But then it allows you, if your dog were to start to struggle or turn back on you, you can easily push the pole out and create basically a catch pole. So this is great when you have either an uncooperative or an unpredictable dog that you need to move around. So you're not quite sure if the dog's going to escalate, but again, you just want to have that safety tool just in case. So pretty easy. You just put it on like a normal leash and let the whole leash parts drop down like a normal leash. But once you start walking, if your dog just starts to struggle, then you push that leash pull, the pull part out all the way to the base where the dog's neck is, and then you create an instant catch pull. These can be found in some of the same areas that your catch pull can be found. Pet admissions, behavior, we do have her own one in the behavior area, so you can always come ask us for one. 315 and cage wash are other good areas as well. So let me show a video of how to use a leash pull.
Does that work?
Yeah. So you see she put the leash part over and then she kind of let it drop like a normal leash. If she needed to, she could push that pole down, create the catch pole component. To take it off, so we do have an added temporary leash put on it because the key is to get the pole part back into a little ring that's near the neck. So it can be a little challenging, so you kind of just work on getting it off, and then you can slip the whole leash pole off. For some dogs, you may find that you start with the leash pole, but they aren't getting as stressed out. So an easy thing to do is if you can switch them just to a regular slip leash, then you won't have to worry about trying to get the leash pull off with this little ring. You can then just normally take a slip-y-wash. But again, only switch to a slip leash, a regular slip leash, if you are feeling 100% comfortable that the dog is not going to escalate. So now let's talk about our final pole, and that is the Y pole. So it gets its name simply because it looks like a Y. So the win for a Y pole is basically in two kind of situations. So say you have a dog that's showing you concerning behaviors and maybe it's advancing on you. A situation like this could be a loose dog. A loose dog is running around the kennel areas, and when you're trying to approach to put your leash on, you find that the dog is now very forward-facing, maybe growling, maybe showing more of those offensive postures, then a leash pull could really help you in that situation. Or if you are needing to restrain a dog. So we do have other options for restraining. We do have a squeeze gate, stuff like that. But you can also use a Y pull to restrain a dog against a solid service. So for the howl with a loose, forwardly aggressive dog, essentially you're just going to place that pole right there on the chest and kind of hold them back with it. The Y pole is pretty cool because it actually extends out, so you can make it pretty long and allow you to keep a lot of distance between you and that forwardly advancing dog. For restraining dogs, all you would need would be some sort of solid surface like a wall, and you can use the wall as one side and then basically just push it against their shoulders to hold them down. This would work if you're needing to vaccinate. The person can come on the back side and vaccinate on the back end while you're also holding really tight. For that, you may not need the long pole. You can shorten it down and have a little bit more control. These are going to be found in pet admissions, 315, and again, cage wash. So all these poles are pretty much found in the same exact places. So the last thing that we have as approved safety equipment is going to be that baffle board. So these are great if you need to move a dog back or if you need to get something inside a dog's kennel. So again, if you're seeing some of those concerning behaviors and you have a dog that's advancing and you don't have a Y pole nearby, go ahead and use yourself a baffle board. The baffle board basically protects your whole body. So if that dog were to run at you, they're going to hit the baffle board and not you. Also, if you need to get something out of a kennel, so think of it kind of like a shield. Maybe you also work with cats and we have those little hand shields. This is essentially the same thing. So I would put it in the kennel. I would put it over, say I need to get the water dish. I could use it to push the dog back, place it in front of the water dish, and I can easily bend down and pick up the water dish. And then I could slowly exit, fill the water if I have to, or clean it, and then I can bring it back. Or maybe they shredded a toy and they're showing some resource aggression with that toy, and I need to get those pieces out before they ingest it. I can use the baffle board to keep them back while I pick up all those pieces, especially if it's one of our busy times and we're not able to shift that dog. If I can shift the dog using the guillotine, then I would encourage you just to do that, have them run to the other side so you can freely come in with no issues. But again, certain time of year or certain kennels, like your Flex-A kennels, your adoptable pods, you're not going to be able to shift them, and so you may ultimately need to use that baffle board. The other nice thing about the baffle board is I can also use it to, guide a dog back, either back into its kennel, or I can get the dog to pressure it back to go into maybe a corner where somebody else can use either a leash pole or the catch pole to get it released and then get it back into the kennel. These can be found in all of the dog rooms. So this is one thing that we do keep in the dog rooms as opposed to the Y pole. So often the easiest thing for you to grab would be more of a baffle board. Pet Admissions has one, Behavior, we have a couple, and then Cage Wash is always a good place to look to see if there is one that was recently used but now is clean. Okay, so that is kind of the main part of dog safe animal handling. Before we wrap it up, I kind of just wanted to kind of recap on some things. So again, you're going to experience a lot of different behaviors in this environment and a lot of different situations. So each dog is going to be different individually, but each situation, how you respond is going to be different. So for instance, if you were to come across a dog that's panicking, a common place for a dog to panic is on leash. They hit the end of the leash, they start flailing. The first thing to remember is if the dog is refusing to go forward and starting to panic, don't keep trying to make that dog go forward. The best thing for you to do is actually to kind of loosen slack on that leash, step a little forward. Obviously, don't get too close to the dog if it's panicking because you don't want it to, redirect bite, but stop pulling on that leash if it's panicking because of the leash thing. An easy thing to do if the dog is panicking because he doesn't want to come inside is try a different door. Step forward and then see if you can get the dog to go right or left. Sometimes they get used to coming back in the same door over and over and over, and the thought of coming back to their kennel is enough for them to start to panic. And so trying to mix things up and get them to go in a different door may be helpful. If you see someone else who's struggling with a dog that's panicking in those situations, then offering some assistance, sometimes just having another person come along that's friendly and like, come on, buddy, may get the dog to stop panicking and move forward. If you are in a situation where your dog is becoming aroused, what do you do? Well, if you're in the kennel, creating space is the best thing for you to do. So if you needed, step out of that kennel because the longer you are there, the more frustrated that dog's going to get, especially if you were in the midst of trying to take the dog outside and you're having an issue getting that leash on. They're going to get more and more aroused, potentially more and more mouthy. So sometimes just stepping away. Say you are outside with the dog. There's a couple options you can do. If you're close to a play yard, if you can get into the play yard and be able to then shut the gate between you and the dog and create that distance, that's really helpful. The other thing is if you're holding on to the leash, you can always kind of do this little version of a straight arm. Hold that dog back with the leash, especially if it's trying to jump and get towards you. Maybe it's already placed its mouth on you. Just try to keep that dog back. If any of those situations are occurring, though, the best thing for you to do if you are not in a kennel is ultimately your goal is to get back to the kennel because we got to get that dog back secure and so you can then walk away because it's not necessarily going to get better if you're like, I'll just take it around the friendship circle and it will relax. That is not always the case. So find a way in the moment if the dog is really panicking or really aroused to separate yourself out, but ultimately try to get the dog, if you're not in the kennel, back into the kennel. And then aggression, what kind of aggression are you seeing? Is it offensive aggression because you're messing with mom and her puppies? Do you need to be messing with mom and her puppies? Is it, escalating because you are, trying to restrain it and it's the restraint that's causing it? So look at why the dog may be exhibiting that behavior and see if you can alter how you do it. If you do need to vaccinate or restrain, use your safety equipment, your squeeze gates, your baffle boards, something else that would allow you to still be able to do your job. Sometimes though, if you have a dog getting to that point, just walking away, again, making sure that dog is secure in his kennel and just walking away so that dog can actually settle and decompress. And then, like I said, lastly, if you see other people struggling, please help. Sometimes it takes just a couple people to be able to get a dog outside that's panicking back in. Or an aroused dog, if you are able to distract it even just for a second, that may give the person who's handling dog a chance to change something or re-kennel it or whatever. So if you are able to, especially as staff members, if you see a volunteer struggling, please offer some help so that we can help prevent bites and stuff from occurring. So that is all of dog safe animal handling. If any questions came up while you were watching this, please write them down. And you can always either email behavior staff or you can stop by the behavior office and we can answer those questions for you. We also recommend if you're ever in a situation that you didn't quite understand, that you can always talk to behavior. And then finally, if you ever need help with anything, it is okay to also ask for behavior's help. Sometimes we'll just come help you and encourage you to do it and just kind of be support. But sometimes it may be a situation that we jump in and do it and something still that you can watch and still, gather some information of how to do different things. Because ultimately, practice is really what's going to help. So even if we do it, it may be something that you can then try at a later date and practice on your own. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and you have a good rest of your day.